You're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with your host, D.Cal.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? It is D.Cal. I am for the technical difficulties and the delay on the previous episode. Welcome to the podcast, episode 126 or 125B, depending on how you want to look at it. So, we left off on the previous episode discussing about, and we're not going to rehash that. It is. So we're just going to move forward on that. But before we get into that, we don't want to break routine, so we want to say welcome to everybody who is listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast here on the Spreaker app or the Spotify or iHeartRadio or wherever you're getting your podcasts from. The E.I.T.H.R podcast is the elephant in the room where we talk about topics and discussions that are usually difficult for people to have within their peers. So that's what we do here. Welcome. Social media, you can follow us on Instagram or Twitter. The handle is going to be the same. The E.I.T.H.R, T-H-E-E-I-T-H-R. Now, Twitter supposedly is rebranding itself. So we're just waiting for the official update and change of the logo and the name and the dialogue and the language and all that fun stuff. So until then, y'all still my tweeps, and we're gonna keep going until it officially changes. 916-282-9372. That's the phone number for the podcast. So you can text, you can call, give suggestions of what it is that you would like for me to talk about, so on and so forth. That'd be greatly appreciated. GNSETV.com. Free subscription to our own television station, channel, streaming channel, however you want to phrase it, to make yourself feel, good about following it. So I feel great about it. So it's kind of my own platform, and I want to say thanks to everybody who's listened to the podcast from, why am I getting the two countries confused? I'm looking right at it. I want to say Switzerland, but it's Sicily. Obviously, that's completely not even the same spelling, whatever. So Sicily, New England, Florida. Want to give a shout out to Romania. We got some listenership out in Romania. I'm kind of just anxious to pick back up where I left off at on the last episode of the podcast. So, like I said, we talked about the Florida situation. That's fun. And if you missed the episode completely because it's your first time tuning in, you could just check out the previous episode. You can also go to YouTube and search for the parent company, which is the GNS Inc. THEGNSINC. And you can see the previous episode right there, or listen to the previous episode right there. So we're going to pick up right where we left off. So we talked about that, and we were discussing they're reopening the Tupac murder after damn near 2.5 decades of it. So I kind of gave a rundown where Orlando Anderson was the person who supposedly killed Tupac Shakur after an altercation they had in a bar. And I remember mentioning that in the previous episode. His uncle Keefe D has been allegedly saying that he was there. He was in the car when it happened. There was a gentleman who was the driver. So there's a whole gamut to it. So last thing I remember was talking about the artist. I still don't know if I'm saying it right. Cerati, Cerrati, E.I.T.H.R on Facebook. And this is back in January 23. So this has been a hot minute. It's just now getting some traction, like I said, in the last few days. So I'm going to read this to you so you guys could get the picture of why this is such a big deal, especially at the end. The punchline, it's different. So it goes like this. Now it's official. Keefe D, Orlando Anderson's uncle, confessed everything. He explained step by step what really happened in Las Vegas on the night of September 7th, 1996. Here's what happened. Tupac, Suge Knight, and a few friends went to Las Vegas to see the Mike Tyson fight. After the fight, a death row member named Trayvon Lane saw Orlando Anderson chilling a few meters away from them. Orlando Anderson robbed Trayvon Lane in the past and stole his death row chain. So apparently this is what sparked everything. Trayvon Lane told Tupac. Then Tupac rushed to Orlando and the fight broke out. Death row members were stomping Orlando's head while he was laying on the floor. A security man managed to stop the fight. 15 seconds, Tupac, Suge Knight, and the rest of the crew rushed directly to get out of the building. And I remember watching this too, the surveillance cameras of this. I vividly remember this. So, back to the article. Then they went to Suge's apartment in Vegas to change clothes. Meanwhile, Orlando Anderson's homies heard about what happened. Keefe D, Orlando's uncle, Zip, DeAndre Dre Smith, Orlando Anderson, those were the passengers in the white Cadillac. They knew what Tupac planned. They knew that Tupac planned a performance in Club 662 after the Mike Tyson fight. So they went to Club 662 at the same time Tupac was still at Suge's apartment to change clothes. And they waited 15 to 20 minutes, but Tupac didn't appear, so they drove back to get something to eat. At the same time, Tupac was driving in his BMW on the other side of the street. They recognized him because girls were screaming his name and loud music was coming from the BMW. So they made a quick U-turn. The BMW came to a stop because of a red traffic light. The Cadillac stopped next to them. Keefe D handed a gun to Orlando Anderson. Orlando leaned out the window and started shooting rapidly. Tupac tried to get on the back seat. Suge Knight tried to duck. After the shooting, they made a quick turn to the right into Koval Lane, and the Cadillac disappeared in the night of Las Vegas. Actually, they just drove back to the MGM Hotel, parked their Cadillac in the parking lot, and after they left the hotel, after parking their Cadillac, they saw ambulances everywhere and how they put Tupac in an ambulance. Because after the shooting, Suge Knight made a quick U-turn and also drove back, and the car came to a stop at Las Vegas Boulevard. So the murderers were a few meters away while they were putting Tupac in the ambulance. Keefe D also confessed that they were all hanging out with Puff Daddy. Here's where the plot thickens, if you will. Keefe D also confessed that they were all hanging out with Puff Daddy. Puffy once told them he would give anything for Tupac and Suge's head. So after they killed Tupac, Zip, the driver of the white Cadillac, tried to get his money from Puffy for killing Tupac. But Puffy never gave them their money, and that is why Biggie had to die. Simply, Tupac got killed by the hands of a 21-year-old South Central Crip because he stole a death row chain from Trayvon Lane and got beaten by Tupac hours before Tupac got shot. Biggie got killed because some MF didn't get their money for killing Tupac. That's an interesting story that I just read you. Now, apparently there was an investigation of a house in Las Vegas who I believe was Keefe D's wife or girlfriend or someone related. And this is kind of how and why everything is starting to come to the surface now. Growing up, I vividly remember during the East Coast, West Coast beef, tension, rivalry. It was bad. Like it was bad to those of us in the audience, those who are not in the industry, right? Because you have in the industry, the artists knew what was going on. They knew what was and what wasn't, which is interesting because if you remember the dual CD with Tupac, All Eyes on Me, he did a song with Method Man and Redman. And I remember an interview with Method Man, watching an interview with Method Man, that he basically said, he was in the club. It was good. Like, they knew who was cool and who wasn't. They understood what the deal was. But as fan bases, kind of like fans of a rival team, which is obviously clearly not on the same level, but kind of just an analogy, hopefully y'all can put it together. The fans are the ones who make it bigger than what it really is. So the entertainers kind of feed off of that a little bit. But it all initially stemmed from when Pac was robbed and shot in New York. Because he felt, this is New York, this is your city, talking about Notorious Big. How can you not know what's going on in your city regarding me? And they happen to be in the same building that the studio that Pac was going to happened to be. It's a situation of the people associated with overall bad thing. Because of that, it cost some people their lives, man. And like I said, this particular thing is interesting because you have someone, for whatever reason, confessing, yeah, I'm an accessory to murder. I don't know if there's some type of immunity he's granted because of this. I don't know. But if the story checks out, it's interesting because Biggie got killed for something that he literally had no part in. You know what I mean? That's the cold part. If you ever seen the movie Notorious, which is like basically the movie about Notorious Big, you kind of see in that film what happens. And I remember being in the theater watching that film, and when Pac, who in that movie was played by Anthony Mackie. Crazy, right? To think about Anthony Mackie as Tupac. But he did his thing as Tupac. Like, he went from Papa Doc to Tupac to went to Falcon to Captain America. Yo, Mackie got range. I think Mackie got range. So he played the Tupac character, and you see them, Pac saw little C's, and C's is like, yo, what are you doing here? They offer me to record the studio. Oh, that's crazy. We at the studio right now. Come on up. Okay, cool. And it's wild because as C's is talking to Tupac, he's heading down to meet him. As Pac is coming up to see them, that's when the robbery takes place in the elevator. And so when the elevator door is open and he sees Pac bleeding, shot, it's almost like, how this happened? Like, 2 minutes ago, I was just talking to you, and in a blink of two eyes, you in the elevator shot up bleeding. And at that point, I can understand where Pac made the assumption, because I just saw you gave them the green light because you knew I was coming up. Y'all set me up for this. But when you watch the film, you see, and I remember, like I said, in the theater, everybody was almost like stereo, in unison. Once we saw that scene and Pac went into, and we saw the lobby, everybody was like, oh, that's what happened. And you have to just watch the rest of the film knowing nobody had anything to do with that, bro. It was just a bad coincidence. And you put it together, it makes sense on how he could assume Tupac Shakur, Biggie had something to do with it. But then when C's ran back to go get Big and was like, yo, Pac been shot, everybody strapped up, because that was their homie. So it broke his heart when Pac turned on him, because he's confused, like, my man, I had nothing to do with that. And in the movie, you see Biggie attempting to visit him in the hospital. Pac did not know who to trust. Now listen, I've never been shot before. Never been shot before. Let alone 5 times close range. Right? So at that young of an age, 23, 24 years old, I can understand how, for lack of better terms, paranoia kicked in. And he didn't know who to trust at that point. And then here comes the song, Hit 'Em Up. Right? It's like, imagine your best friend or a very, very close friend accusing you of doing something you literally was not even there. You were there. Imagine that. You were there, but you weren't there. But you get blamed for being part of it. Again, both these men were in their early 20s. It's easy for us who are in our 30s, 40s, 50s to sit back and say, oh man, you know what I'm saying? Because we're looking at it from a bird's eye view, third person perspective 20 years later. It's a safe ass distance to say what you should have done. But in the moment, you don't know what you would do. Right? It's wild to think. And then when you watch the All Eyes on Me movie, it's a very similar depiction of what happened between the two men. So it's kind of like, okay, both parties see it the same way, that it was just a bad combination of timing and like, bruh, word, this is going to happen here. And a lot of us, man, who grew up in that era, we kind of just think, what would hip hop, rap music, film be like if both of these men, A, that situation never happened at the studio, but B, if they were able to have a conversation. Because Nas even said at Bryant Park, him and Pac had a conversation. And Nas was in Las Vegas that night when Pac was in the hospital. Well, I believe he was going to go to Vegas. Can't remember if he said if he's in Vegas or headed to Vegas. But he was doing a show. And I remember him stopping his show to pay respects to the passing of Tupac. It was like if Nas would have, if he would have been able to sit down with Pac, like, yo, what's up? How can we squash this? Now, again, this is all before social media. The internet was like, the internet didn't exist. There were no camera phones. Everything was, it was just, you had no one to misconstrue anything. That's why they want to meet in private. That's crazy though. That's just crazy that this is coming back up. And listen, I said on previous episodes, I'm not from Los Angeles. I'm from Northern California. I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from the East Bay Area. So we have different rules and guidelines up here than they do in Southern California, right? The politics up here are different than the politics down there. So things might have been different had something happened up here, but it didn't, and it wasn't. But the thing was, Puffy said he will do anything to have them go. Someone made them go. And then Puffy's like, I ain't paying you for that. And they took his number one. So now the question comes to, if this is legit, which again, it has some traction, what's going to happen to Puffy now? To those who don't know Puffy, Diddy, because back then he was Puffy, Puff Daddy, Sean Puffy Combs. Then he changed his name to P. Diddy. Then it's just Diddy. Then he changed it to Love. So all those aliases. But happened to traction. If they find that this is legit, if they find that all of this, man, that's going to be wild to me. That's just going to be wild to me. So that's it, man. That's what I want to talk about with the Tupac situation. Now, let's get into something fun, shall we? So, this past weekend, oh boy, it's been interesting, man. So, we live in a world where, I'll say this, we live in a world where everything is hypersensitive. And one way or another. One of the reasons, in my opinion, that everything is so hypersensitive is because everything has been hyper neglected. Right? Everything's been hyper neglected. A lot of the issues that we have had as a society has tended to get overlooked for so long that it's just created a walking tension whenever you engage with people, because people have things going on in their own lives, and then you add like just this sprinkle of gunpowder on this flame, so anything happens. Now I'm also going to say this too. I'm a firm believer that if you don't have experience in something, your opinion is uninformed. You could have an opinion, but your opinion is uninformed because your experience is very minimum. Yes, you can learn from the experience of other people, sure, but that doesn't constitute equivalent knowledge of something compared to someone who actually has experienced it. Because I've experienced people say things are one way, but when I experience it, it's something the opposite. And then I can ask them questions about their experience. The point is this: somebody could try something and quit immediately because it was uncomfortable. Someone could have tried something and continued on despite it being uncomfortable, and be able to understand how the process works. So when you ask those two people, someone says, oh, no, that sucked. It was this, that, and the third. But someone else will have a completely different understanding of it. It's because they experienced it. They actually took on the challenges. One's informed. I tried it. It sucked. It didn't work. Well, it sucked and didn't work because you didn't get good at it. The moment it got difficult, you stopped. Now, it might not have been your vibe. Might not have been your connection. It might not have been a good match. That's cool. But for those of us who it was, we understand it a little bit better than you because we get the process differently than you. When you see a path and you choose to bypass that path, yes, you have an opinion about something. Sure. You can tell someone what the terrain looks like based on your observation. But if someone actually walked that path, they have a better understanding of the terrain and can tell it in more detail than you, who hasn't. Does that make sense? So it's difficult to tell someone about a path you've never been on, but you may have read about, right? That's like when on social media when someone talks about the Bay Area. I have a difficult time in conversations with them because it's like, how are you going to sit back and tell me what it's like to be in said city over here when you're in that state over there and never been here? Because you read an article, because you read a post, because you Google pictures. That doesn't mean you understand what it is. That could be a small fraction, a small section. And I've had this conversation before on the podcast. People make these judgments based on uninformed information. And then when you try to inform them, they choose not to accept it because it doesn't match what it is they choose to believe. Why am I giving this explanation? So this dude, Jason Aldean, made a song. Jason Aldean made a song. And it's rubbed a few people the wrong way. I didn't respond to anything right away because I was like, well, again, hypersensitive society right now to everything. Everything is just, everyone is wound up tight and tense. I get it. But it's also one of those things where it could look like, but not be. I understand. If it sounds like a snake and looks like a snake, it's a snake. I get that. Or it could be something sounds like a snake and you see something slithering around, but when it comes at the grass, it was actually a smaller animal, like in a can with a rock or something. You see what I'm saying? Shitty analogy. I get it. But hopefully the sharp people understand what I'm trying to get at. That because it may appear to be on the surface, dig deeper. Flip side of that coin. If it is what it is, then that's what it is. But I think what happens in certain scenarios, people will reach for low-hanging fruit. And it was low-hanging fruit for folks to make the judgment of this song being a racial tied melody with his video choices and its choice of words and subliminal messaging and all this other fun stuff. So my thing was, okay, I know what everyone is saying, but let's flip that coin over and say, okay, what if it's this? Now, a lot of people are going to call you naive. A lot of people are going to say they're going to judge you because you're not jumping on the hate train right away. And it's human nature. It's knee jerk. But I have to say, dude knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was saying. And listen, I've been to small towns. I'm a city guy. I've been to small towns. I love small towns. Small towns are awesome. Small towns are really close knit together. Small towns is their own community. If you're from a small town, you understand a small town. 100% understand that. Small towns are also isolated. So the big city talk and big city walk, it's cool, it's exciting, but it's also one of those things where there's a lot of racket and noise. There's a lot of unnecessary drama that small towns choose to deal with. In addition, small towns can be, not all of them, small towns can be very, very close-minded. They can be very, very prejudiced. Prejudice is different than racist. We use the two as the same when they're not. They can be very, very prejudiced because most small towns are so rural and far from big cities. Their only access is television, social media, news. So I get it. But I try to tell people this. When you move from a small town to a big city, it's very similar to moving to a different county. When you move from another city to a different city, it's very similar to moving to a different state. When you move from one state to another, it's very similar to moving to a different country. When you travel to a different country, that shit can feel like it's a whole different world. The customs are different. The rules are different. The habits are different. The routines are different. The mannerisms are different. The hospitality is different. The way people engage are different. Small towns tend to be a little more slower. Sure, it's a slower pace. Big city, fast pace, hustle and bustle. You get that. Depending on your city, depending on where your city is in that county depends on where it is in that state. That state depends on what that time zone. Yo, it's different. I said earlier, Northern California politics are different than Southern California politics. And there's a massive amount of cities in Northern California that are different from one another. The culture is different. The pace is different. The speed is different. Same thing with Southern California. It's different amongst themselves. LA is nowhere near the same as San Diego. Matter of fact, from what I've heard from people from Southern California, figuratively speaking, those two cities hate each other. They despise one another. They don't like each other. Not in a violent type of way, I don't think, but more so in a culture, pace, mindset. Los Angeles is a lot faster. San Diego is a lot more mellow. One might be too slow for the other might feel too rushed. One's louder. One is just chill. One is more violent. The other it's violent, but you don't really hear about it because that's not the first choice, right? From what I've been told from people from down there, it's just a different everything. So with that said, the town you live in might be different than the city you're next to, and vice versa. So with old boy, you have to understand some of the footage that he was using from further looking into it. There was message being sent, bro. And the thing is, this song was released earlier this year. So the theory is the song didn't do too well. or it didn't do as good as they wanted it to when they first dropped it. So they thought they would spice up something. So they decided to put together this creative music video that would cater to a certain group or demographic. Stir the pot, if you will. I think a lot of people who are not offended tends to have this history of telling people who are offended, you shouldn't be offended because I'm not. That that's not a good strategy. That's telling someone how they should feel because it's not how you feel. That's kind of a narcissistic mindset, I think. Right? If someone's hungry and you're not hungry. I ain't. Okay? That ain't your stomach growling. It's mine. Right? So, first and foremost, I think, feel, and believe. If something, the first thing you shouldn't do is shut up. Wrong. Wrong. What's offensive about it? I'm going to ask. You should ask. Hey, try asking. What's offensive about it? And I think a lot of people, they want to discredit the racial part because, and I've seen this so many times in comments and I've heard it so many times in discussions, because there was nothing directly said racially, therefore it's not racist. These are also the same people that if something was to happen, they would be oblivious to what people are trying to say. If you understand gaslighting and you understand dog whistling, then you'll have a better understanding of what people are saying. There's a comedian, I cannot remember her name to save my life, but she made this joke. And she says, the news is really manipulative, right? Because the news doesn't tell you anything. They put things out for you to come up with a conclusion, and that's very misleading. I'm piecing together the joke. She says, like for example, they'll show an Asian woman driving, and the next thing they know, they'll show a car crash. And then they'll say, I don't know what happened. What are you? I'm wondering what this could have meant. We don't know, but what do you guys think happened? That's kind of the theory, right? They'll show something in an area, give you a description, and let you put two and two together yourself. Always? No. Do they? Yes. You don't have to say something directly for people to put shit together. The problem is there's a lot of context missing in some cases. What he is saying is about looters and rioters and people who disrespect the law and protesters and okay, but understand something. If you live in a small town, you don't necessarily have to worry about that, depending on what you look like. Now, I've lived in small towns before. That's why I said I love small towns. I don't have a problem with a small town. However, I didn't say I never had a problem in a small town. I just said I don't have a problem with small towns. I've been profiled. I've been stopped. I've been approached in small towns. Now, me personally, there was some reactions I gave that I look back and say, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have. Sure, hindsight. But if you've never been in this situation, you can't tell someone who has how they should have handled it, because the approach is different, right? It's completely different. Someone who looks like me and someone my size, I have done every possible thing when approaching police officers to show and demonstrate I am of no threat. Listen, half the time they're cool with it but keep in mind, the ones that I do that with, they tend to be around my age or younger, generally. They have a different mindset. They have a different generation. They have a different upbringing. They were in a different world. So they see it differently than the older generation. A different mindset. A different upbringing. They may have had a different career. Different experiences. But I've had police officers who test. I gave you an example. We're driving in Susanville, California. This is a few years ago. And I was heading back to Sacramento. I was out there doing some sales for fragrances. And I'd always done well in Susanville. Again, I like small towns. I know how to move around in a small town. Still catch some flack every now and then, but I've learned how to avoid it and pay them no mind, because the negative attention they give me is positive to somebody else. So I just kill them with kindness by hanging out with the people who do like me, which pisses the people who don't like me off even more, because they want to say something, but they can't. So that's how I manipulate that situation. But that's me. Not everyone's built like that. So as I'm driving home, I'm going down this one back street along the train track. I get pulled over. We had just bought this Toyota Camry, and we were trying to get the registration situated, but the people who we bought it from, they stopped answering the phone. I guess because they got their money, they wasn't tripping on anything else. So I put my last $10 in cash in this car. Gas was a lot cheaper back then. So he pulled me over for the registration, and my L's was suspended at that time. So naturally they had to tow the car. I'm upset because I'm like, look, I just getting back from Lakeview, Oregon, and I'm here in was it Susanville? I'm sorry, it wasn't Susanville. Was it E.I.T.R? I think it was E.I.T.R. No, it was Susanville. And so, I just put my last money in the gas tank, and I'm heading home. Well, cool. Once you see that second car pull up, buddy, someone ain't going home. So I knew what the deal was. I was hoping it wouldn't be, but it was. I had a knee brace on my leg from another situation that happened with law enforcement. Different story. And so put your hand behind your back, put your hand on top of your head, spread your legs, right? And I tell the officer, I said, I have a knee brace, as he's patting me down. I have a knee brace on my leg. Okay, so he felt the knee brace, so he knew it was on my leg. Okay, can you spread your legs a little bit? I'm like 6'3". He's probably like 5'8", 5'9", right? I'm spreading my legs. Now he taps the foot that doesn't have the knee brace, and then he swipes his leg over, and trust me when I say this, it was a much harder tap on that foot. It wasn't an extreme kick out of that leg, but it was I have a knee brace on that. I have a bad knee. I I have a bad knee. Can you know? Okay. Just spread your legs. And I turn around, hand still on my head. I asked you not to kick that leg. I told you I have a bad knee. I have the brace. Turn back around, please. After that, on the passenger side, near the front fender of my car, his partner's there, and he has his hand on his gun. The only lights out there are their lights and the one lone street lamp that happened to be by us, but was behind my car. So it's just the three of us. My leg again. Bruh. And that's when he puts his hand on mine and he pulls back to lean me backwards because he's expecting me to react at this point. Many cases, someone would have done something. Because I told you 3 times, 2 after you kick at that leg, I have a bad knee. I'm wearing a brace. And no, it wasn't something I had it on because I needed it, but I also needed to make money, so I had to do more walking, which irritated my leg while I had the brace on, so everything was a little more sensitive and sore. He kept asking me, so do you have any money for a bus? I'm like, no, I put the last $10 I had in my car. And we waited for the tow truck. And the tow truck gets there, and you can see he legitimately had this, like his expression was, damn, this guy really doesn't have any money, and I'm taking his car, and he doesn't live here. You could tell he had some remorse, but he wasn't going to say anything. Again, I'm asking you, do you have any money to get home? I told you I put the last cash in my gas tank to go home, and you guys are now towing my car. So no, I don't have any money. He's looking at me like he's hoping I'm lying because he feels bad now. You can tell it. That's when the tow truck guy told me that again, according to the tow truck guy, 30-day holds are bullshit. If you got the money for the truck, like for them when they hitch the card to the tow truck, if you got the money for the truck and can pay the release, you can get your car right then and there. They tell you it's a 30-day hold on your vehicle, so it can incur the storage fees to help. He says that's how small towns make their money on impounding vehicles. I will never forget that because he's telling me this as he takes me to the casino that was just built out that way for me to stay there until there was a shuttle bus that took me from Susanville to Reno or Tahoe, and that's where I was. That's where I was. It crazy, man. It's you. Small towns are great, but if you're not from there, sometimes prejudice mindsets can creep in. Even if you're not doing anything, most of them will provoke you to act in the way they expect you to, just so they can sit back and say, I knew you were like that. Not realizing that they're creating the problem. Because all they have to know off of you is what they see in media. So with this Jason Aldean thing, again, listen, he says some shit that he knew was going to stir the pot. He was not only talking to a certain demographic, but he was catering to another. I get it. It's entertainment. And anyone who's dealt with a manipulative, narcissistic type of individual They're always going to gaslight you. They're going to say something slick that they know is going to piss you off. And they're going to do it in front of people to get you to react a certain way. So they look innocent. They look like they didn't do anything. They know damn well it's something that's going to press your button. So when you flip, you're right for flipping out, but you're wrong because people don't understand it. The audience doesn't understand why you're acting that way. Because all he said was this. What's the big deal? They don't understand the internal shit behind the scenes that's going on with that conversation. So when you're outraged about it, they're oblivious to it. Many by choice. Many choose to be oblivious to some of the issues that go on. Because they feel people are being too sensitive. It's a combination of the small group of people who are making the most noise getting majority of the attention. The ones with sense and conscious thought who can critically think and break shit down, you don't get ratings. You don't get views. You're boring. The ones who entertain and give us something to talk about, give us something to actually debate, give us something to argue over, you're the one who keeps the conversation going. You get the microphone. I don't think he really thought no one was going to understand what he was saying. So you have to play the innocent role. Anyone ever seen the movie Crash? Love that movie Crash. Okay. I despise Matt Dillon because of the character he played in that movie. He's a phenomenal actor. That's why I hate him. Because he played that role really well. He was the cop in the movie Crash. No, I don't hate him because he's a cop. I hate his character because of the type of cop he was. Ryan Phillippe was his partner in that film. Dillon played a police officer who got sick and tired of all the color people getting all the handouts and the freebies, and someone like his dad who was a veteran who saw no color get screwed over by the same people who he tried to help. That's his perspective. His pops, you could tell, wasn't that kind of guy, but that's how he saw it. And as a police officer, you know, every day I see you guys complaining about how bad you have it, but at the same time, you guys are, you're out here doing it to yourself. He's oblivious to the why because he's so focused on the what's. There was a scene where Ryan Phillippe had requested a transfer to a different partner. And if you watch the scene, him talking to his superior, he's trying to not throw anybody under the bus, but at the same time, he's not comfortable with what his partner is. So when he gets the approval for a new partner, Matt Dillon's character is trying to school him on how to survive with people. And when he goes to his new partner, Matt Dillon, how he talks about people one way, but then how he greets his new partner is something completely different. I know it sounds foreign to anyone who's listening to this because I don't want to give away the scene. But if you look at the movie Crash, it's almost like in Ryan Phillippe's character, like his reaction to Matt Dillon's character was like, you're a fucking snake, bro. You're a snake. You talk bad about people, but then you smile in their faces, but then behind their backs, you're the worst kind of cop. That's why he didn't want to be his partner. I said that because Matt Dillon's the kind of his character, not the person, that character is the kind of character who If you call him out on it, he'll deny it. It's gaslighting. It's dog whistles. That's basically what it is. It's certain phrases and certain words and certain things and certain actions. Those who understand recognize it. Those who are oblivious won't get it. Right? And this is not the greatest analogy to give. Sharp people will get it. Everyone else will say it's not true. Women get this dog whistle type of thing in the workplace where someone makes an inappropriate comment. On the surface, it sounds innocent. But if you know the person who's saying it, you understand what's underneath those words. You understand what's between those lines. And when you try to explain it to somebody, you sound crazy, or you might sound conceited. You think everybody wants you, right? You think everyone wants to sleep with you. You think everyone's out to get you and not give you the position because you're a woman. Now, there are certain people who put themselves in situations, and then when those situations have consequences, they play the victim. That happens in everything. That happens in every day. That happens in every group. Yes. But there's a difference between understanding what's counterfeit and there's a difference between understanding what's authentic. We live in a world of counterfeit. No one recognizes authenticity anymore. And when they're given authenticity, they claim it's fake because it doesn't match what's real, which is counterfeit. Because that's all they know. That's the only world they're accustomed to. And it takes them having to be set aside and separated from their normal world to understand what's authentic. Then it makes it easier for them to see what's between the lines. So this Jason Aldean thing, he knew what he was saying. Now, the video shows footage of certain instances, and half of the clips aren't even from America. But they're showing protests and riots of try this in a small town. I guess they feel people who protest, if you were to come to a small town and do this, we wouldn't have it. We wouldn't allow it. Okay. One thing about small towns, they also have drug problems. They're warm and fuzzy and friendly, but they also have tweakers. Someone once said, try that in small. You know what you can try in a small town? Meth. You can try that in a small town. Meth. I remember when I was doing the fragrance business, we were coming back from E.I.T.H.R. Our first time out in E.I.T.H.R, California. We stopped in this one small town called Fall River Mills. I loved when we were doing the fragrance business. Man, listen, I loved going out to Fall River Mills. Bieber, New Bieber, Highway 299. I love that little town, man. There was a salon out there too. We would sell the fragrance and perfume, cologne and shit. And there was a salon out there right across, somewhere across the street from the Shell gas station that was out there. And I loved it. Going there, perfume to the women who were doing hair. They let me sell perfume to the women who were getting their hair done. It was great. So we were coming back from E.I.T.H.R and we stopped at the Shell gas station. And the clerk there, we were cool. Like the group I was with, we were good. So they let us talk to the people at the gas pumps. I believe he got something from one of us. So there was a dude. This is so funny. This particular day we're driving. And I shit you not. Only in a small town. Dude was walking down the street on the opposite side of the road, but in the same direction we were going. He had an axe. Like a He-Man. Remember the cartoon? Like a battle axe in his hand. walking, and the woman who was with me, one of the women who was with me, Lawn, that was her nickname. I was like, hey, Lawn, pitch the guy right there on the road. And she's like, are you fucking crazy? He has an axe. I said, yeah. So obviously he likes cologne. He walking with an axe. So show him something that smells like Axe. You know, the body spray. Corny dad joke. You have to be there to be funny. So she's waffling. And I'm the kind of person, I'm going to put you in this situation and see if you sink or swim. So I called him, hey, my man, my girl right here in the back, she had a question for you. And I pull up to the side of the road. Here he comes walking across the street. And she's like, oh, shit, EO, like for real? And you see her cowering in the car. She starts talking to him. He doesn't get anything. I was like, hey, my man, well, we don't want to keep you from your Sunday morning business. Where you headed? Like, oh, nowhere. Just on my way to go see my wife, my ex-wife. And we were like, oh, okay. Hope everything goes well. I'll never forget that. Never forget that. That's when we went back to the Shell gas station, fueled up, try to, sell a few more people. And he comes walking past us again, man. Small town. Only in a small town we see a man walking down the street with a fucking battle axe going to go see his ex. I asked him more questions after that. They're either going to love you or small towns are either going to hate you. But most of them will give you the same energy you give. If they know you're from a big city, in today's world at least, they're really cool with people. They're really cool with people. They also tend to be a little naive, which is a good thing. Because if you have good intention, you got a trusted group of people who, okay, cool. They'll welcome you into their home, bro. Like, it's crazy. If you are a bad apple, you really will spoil the bunch. You really will. Give a bad reputation to anyone who looks similar to you in a small town. That's just how it is. That's how it is. But again, with dude, he knew what he was doing intentionally. I don't care what anybody says, bro. I am ask anyone who personally knows me, they will tell you I am down the middle. All the evidence could be right there in front of me. I'll still try to be as balanced as possible before making a decision. Once my decision is made, it's like, okay, cool. Until new evidence proves otherwise, whatever I choose, that's the way I'm going. I'm going to understand everything else you're saying, like this podcast. I may not agree, but I'm going to understand more with what I'm agreeing or disagreeing with. Dude, the dog whistle undertones in the song, calculated with the video imagery that was specifically chosen to put together in this montage for his musical. Bruh, you want some bullshit. You want some bullshit. That song, it's for the super angry conservative that's tired of their world being rocked and shaken. And they're going to let everybody know, you libtards, they're done having it. Here's what I realized. Many people, whatever your political side is you choose, the information that you're exposed to shapes your opinion. Duh. Newsflash. Hot take. The problem with that, it limits your experience. And a lot of people choose not to associate with those who see things differently than them because everybody's so busy trying to sell their belief and make you buy it. I got a friend right now, Jay, up in Oregon. She swears up and down Trump is the savior for this country. I'm like, no, he ain't. What he needs to do is just save his ass from all the lawsuits he's getting himself into, right? I told her, Trump, I give credit where credit is due. The one thing I admire about dude, again, I've said this on the podcast before, he ain't a politician. So he doesn't understand the game, and he's not going to play the game because he's a businessman, not a politician. Here's the bad thing about Trump. He's a businessman, not a politician. So, I've said this before. People love Trump for the exact same reasons they thought they were going to hate about Obama. Right? It's, why do you hate Floyd Mayweather? For the same reasons why you loved Conor McGregor. Interesting, right? Interesting. When the person you like does the shit the person you don't like do, it's different. We justify it. Look at sports. If you have a player that is known for being horrible or just terrible or just a sheer fuck up, he has a bad night. He is garbage. He's trash. He needs to be cut. He needs to be traded. He needs to get ran out the league. You have a player who is lovable, more importantly, who is marketable, and fans love. He can have shitty statistics, and then becomes, we really need to get him some help and surround him with better players, and because he's doing everything by himself, and you can tell that it's taking its toll, and he's not a one-man show. It's a team effort. I feel sorry for this person. It's all based on perspective, right? Is the glass half empty or half full? It depends. Are you pouring into it or are you drinking from it? You got to know where you're looking at. And for me, Trump is a businessman before anything else. Politics, he tried to run as a business. I'll never forget the day where he had the protesters by the White House shot up with rubber bullets and gas grenades, or whatever the fuck it was. And he's standing there for a photo op with a Bible he was holding upside down. You know, one of those Bibles you get at the Motel 6? Later on that night, if my timeline is correct, didn't he go into the bunker of the White House and tell them to turn the lights off? Planet Earth can run out of electricity. The White House will still have lights, bro. I don't care if the grid explodes. The White House always has its lights on. He had them turn. You can Google that shit. He had them turn the lights off of the White House. That's interesting. If you like somebody, you side with them. If you don't care for that person, anything they say or do is wrong. It doesn't matter what it is. So this Jason Aldean thing, it's a matter of people who like him, people who don't. But again, here's how I have my empathy for other people whose shoes I do not walk in. I put myself in them. No, not physically. Hypothetically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. I put myself in those shoes to think, what would I do in a situation if this happened? What would I do? What would I say? How would I respond? Right? My imagination is a little bit more creative than people because I'm not so necessarily technology. So for myself, but I do to put myself. Okay. If I was a woman in this situation, how would that make me feel? What would I think? Okay. if my homegirl came to me with this situation, what would I do? Right? Okay. If I'm this particular culture and someone confused me with this culture instead, how would that make me? Got it. Okay, I can understand. But I think what people do, which has always been a thing, we take the low-hanging fruit, right? We go after what fits what we choose to believe, and that's our narrative. And if you pay attention to social media, a lot of the algorithms work that way. Whatever you tend to search and look at and watch, the algorithm picks up that pattern. So it starts to put that type of shit in your news feed. So then you start to believe this is what's going on. No. That's just what you normally pick to watch. So it's feeding you more of that. It could be a good thing, but if that's all you choose to follow, that's all you're going to believe is true. And it's going to be very difficult for you to see anything otherwise because you don't know anything otherwise. So I do my best to look at conservative, look at liberal, look at independent, and have dialogue with people. Whether we think the same, think similar, or think polar opposite, I'm having a dialogue with you. I want to see what it is. Not. Show me, break it down. Right? So that's kind of where this is. Listen, man, again, even if, let me give him benefit of the doubt, still, which I believe is bullshit, but devil's advocate, because we like to do that here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Someone said, we're going to spice things up and we're going to give you this look. So the fans that you're catering to, you resonate with them. I don't even think whoever it was acknowledged the fans that it was going to piss off, but resonate toward the fans that it's going to love this, which typically tends to be extreme right and or right-wing thinking type of people. Listen, I get it, bro. Again, I understand. The moral of the story is this. If someone is offended at something that you are not offended, don't tell them they shouldn't be because you ain't. Because I'm going to sit back and say, well, they are, so you should be too. And I think a lot of people, if it doesn't affect them directly, it doesn't affect them at all. And they feel you shouldn't be bothered by it either. So there's that. On my profile picture for social media, I'm going to change this soon, but I'm going to read this. And this is yesterday. Today I'm hearing all the good old boys and girls saying if you don't like Jason Aldean, you don't have to listen to him. Okay. And if you don't like certain library books, you don't have to ban them because you certainly ain't going to read them. Listen, if you tell people who are offended by Jason Aldean not to listen to his music, okay, well, check this out. If you are offended by certain books that you ain't reading, why are you taking them away from those who are reading them? That's kind of where the double standard comes into play. And we live in a world right now where if I say something that bothers you, you have to express yourself by showing me you're not offended by getting offended and telling me you're not offended at the same time. That shit makes no sense, right? It's Jason Aldean has a song that offends people. There's nothing racial about that. He didn't say anything racist. You guys are always okay, cool. Someone changes their pronoun to be identified as something else. Next thing you know, folks are losing their shit. How are you going to tell me not to get offended about a song that has undertone and gaslighting, yet you're going to get pissed off at this person over here because they identify as something else? That shit ain't got nothing to do with you, yet you want to cancel them. Interesting. I personally feel that everything that's going on with the LGBTQ community, it's not as big as people think. It's just not. Sorry, folks. It's not. Listen, some of my closest friends are homosexual. Some are trans. So here's the beauty about it. It doesn't bother me because they're not trying to cross that line. Someone once told me years ago, great friend, like a sister to me. She says the one misconception that straight men believe is gay men want them. Newsflash, gay men don't. A gay man might find you attractive, but a gay man's never going to make a move on you. Why? Because most gay people do not want to offend you or be disrespectful or intentionally make you uncomfortable. So they don't. Now, if you give them signs, okay, that's different. You're coaxing them to walk through that door. Get it? So, outside of that, they're not tripping on you. They just ain't. But I think people have this thought, this belief, whatever's in their imagination, that's what the reality is going to be, and it ain't. So, food for thought. She also made a very good point. This whole queen thing was dead. And listen, so much more of it in the news. And when she made that point, I thought to myself, okay, that's fairly valid. Because if drag queens reading to kids were such a detriment because of them trying to teach kids, you would have all kind. You know how as much as they tried to make protesters the same as looters and rioters? Okay. You would see this shit in our news when it comes to drags and transgenders being exactly what they don't see that. They don't see that. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I saw this one video that was sent to me about drag queen doing some kind of twerk dances in school. First of all, use your brain. What school is going to allow that to happen in front of children? Think about it. Just think on your own. What school, elementary school, is going to allow that to be done in front of children? 2, what person is going to want to do that in front of kids? Elementary. Okay. So, some may say conspiracy theorists, whatever. Doesn't that kind of creep in your mind that someone paid someone to do so they can sit back and say, see? Look. Okay. How many of us have. You know what? I'm going to go this route. Here's another reason why drag queens or transgender, it's really not that big of a deal. It really isn't. It's making people feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you why. Nobody had a motherfucking problem with Robin Williams wearing a dress as Mrs. Doubtfire. Nobody. Matter of fact, how many of y'all love that movie, Mrs. Doubtfire? Okay, cool. How many of y'all love Big Mama's House? Okay, cool. How many of y'all watch Medea? Okay, cool. So a man in a dress and makeup doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you. I think what it is, it's the preference that bothers you. It's the preference that scares you. It's your imagination that runs crazy. Got it. Most people in the gay community, they love children, and not in a Catholic priest type of way. I'm talking about they adore kids. They think kids are beautiful. They think kids are amazing. They think kids are fun. Most people that I know who are homosexual can't stand pedophiles and people who harm children. Now, there are some of them who had a rough childhood that led to, sure. And there's all kind of different beliefs and theories of why it is what it is. But in many cases, some of them were never inappropriately touched as a youth, had a great childhood. They just like what they like. Simple as that. I think when it comes to the Medea movies and stuff like that, you knew it was for fun. Maybe that's what it is. You know it wasn't real. You know, okay, so a man chose to dress up as a woman for entertainment purposes is okay. But if a person dresses up as a woman because that's what they identify as, that's a problem. I don't get it. Me personally, I don't get it. Maybe because I know people like that. That's why I'm like, what's the problem? I don't know. Could be me. But I cannot think of any gay person, anybody like that. I can't think of any man in a dress hurting kids. You know what men in dresses or robes who have? Yeah, right. And if you swear to God that homosexuality is a sin and is unconstitutional and America needs to burn it, you might want to take a look at the wardrobe of the founding fathers. Then this is Decal, the Eat the Podcast. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. See you next time on that note. The E.I.T.H.R Instagram. Bye now.
Stop stalling and start miling. Mile.today. That's MILE.today. Mile today. Make it look easy.